Good morning. Good morning. I'm Dr. Kate Dow, and we're here today to talk about a pretty intense thing going on in the last few months. We're here to talk about the news revealing a lot of old sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and how that shows up and can impact us as women, especially with women and our anxiety. So we want to talk about, first of all, how it can impact us, right? Whether we know someone or we've personally been in a situation where we've been harassed or abused, or we're just reading about it. It can be very triggering, right? It can make us feel very vulnerable, very insecure. And if we do have our own experience with it, we can just feel very triggered, right? Our anxiety can get triggered. And unfortunately, I think that's a lot of what's happening right now, is that as women, we're sort of our bubbles of denial of the amount of abuse that has occurred, in the world and still occurs. We're sort of like our bubbles have burst, and we're shocked at like the reality that this really is a prevalent part of our culture as a world culture. And so how do we figure out how we're going to respond to it, right? Because if we just stay isolated and triggered in our own history, because I don't know, I think the stats are at this point that pretty much 1 out of 2 women are going to go through an experience of being sexually harassed or abused in some form. And I myself have my multiple experiences in different ways that showed up for me, from the time I was a very little girl to the time I was married and chose to marry somebody who was abusive. So it's prevalent in our culture. And what we want to first acknowledge is, we have a right to be kind of shocked at the level of exposure that's happening right now, but we also get to choose to look at it as a possible good thing, right? We want to look at, if all of this is coming out, is this because it's going to help us as women face what's happened, face the reality, and do some healing work for ourselves so we can step into our power and help make things different. Now, that's a tall order, it might feel like, but I just want to acknowledge that from some spiritual paths, their point of view is that that's exactly what's going on, is that the denial is breaking, and all the hidden ways that the culture is really out of whack and really abusive to men and women. Until we burst that bubble, we can't create change. So from those spiritual paths' point of view, this is like the age of Aquarius. It's where the truth will be known, that the truth is going to come out, and that's going to help us heal as women and help us then take that step to do what we need to do to help heal and support ourselves and other women, so that we can get out and make a difference and start to really help this patriarchal, failing, very abusive and crazy culture create some changes, right? So I'm just coming from a place of acknowledging that it's appropriate that we're going to be scared at first, then we might be really pissed off and feel like this is time to be able to say it's not okay that this happened. And then we get to talk about, now how do we get to take ownership of what's happened to us, do the healing work so that we don't stay feeling disconnected, we don't stay feeling kind of lost in ourselves from those parts that have been wounded. And we figure out how we're going to get the support we need so that we can move forward with it, so that we can say, I'm showing up for me. I love myself. I went through these horrible things, or I know people who went through these horrible things, and it's not okay. And I'm going to start being loving and kind to myself about the fact that that happened so that I can get past it. Because when we stay in resistance to it, which is really normal and really common, you know, all the crazy things that happened to me in my teenage years that I just kind of wanted to not face. But the reality is, there's parts of me back there. I've got to go get those parts of me and love them and say, I'm sorry that you had no idea you put yourself in that really bad position and this stuff happened and it terrified you and it made you feel disempowered and it made you feel like hating yourself, but it's okay now. We need to move past it. Like, I love you, I forgive you, right, to this part of me so that I can move forward and I can bring those parts back into wholeness with myself so that then I am more my whole self now. I can't go out and help make a difference if I'm split off from these things that have happened to myself, right? I have to bring them, what I call kind of bringing them home into your heart. I've got to bring them home so that I can heal and then go through that process of forgiving myself that this happened, that whatever part that I was unaware and didn't know any better, I'm still gonna like practice loving myself. And yes, forgiving the perpetrators is part of that, but that can't really happen until we kind of embrace and love ourselves. So what I'm talking about today is how anxiety around all of the sexual abuse, exposure can be considered a gift for us to go, holy moly, all those old places are still really triggering me and I'm really scared and angry about it. How do we see it as a positive? Because it's going to help us work through that stuff that maybe we've kind of buried and we didn't want to deal with. Because the time is now, ladies. The time is now for us to do the work that maybe we are avoiding. And anxiety can sometimes be a mirror of that. Like, I'm going to stay stuck and I'm going to stay fearful and overwhelmed. And then I don't have to face this healing work that I know I need to do in order to get out there and be of service. But I'm telling you, ladies, there's only one way out, and it's through. When we can have the courage to show up and love ourselves so that we can heal, then we get to actually get out there in the world and do what we're called to do. All of us are here to share our gift, and part of that gift is helping heal this part of the patriarchy that has not helped women or men. Men are not in any better position because of how crazy the structure is around being disconnected from the feminine, oppressing the feminine, and considering it invaluable. That's not helping men either. Men aren't happy either in the way the culture is. And so we as women, it has to start with us. I'm sorry to tell you the truth, but it really is. We got to start doing the healing work so that we can show up and find our wholeness, right? Which includes not only loving and supporting the parts of us that have been injured by sexual harassment and abuse in our lifetime, but also whatever experiences we have of other people around us, our friends, our own children. Raising a daughter in this culture has been like really frightening. So we get to take charge of showing up and loving ourselves so that we can then have a better relationship with our own inner masculine, and then we get to go help men befriend, love, engage with their feminine, and that's how we're going to help change the world. It's not going to be because we stay angry and disconnected from men and the patriarchy. It's going to be because we do our personal work to heal so that our anxiety isn't running us, so the fear isn't running us. So we can say, this is no longer tolerable, this kind of treatment of the feminine. And that means I'm not going to oppress myself. I'm not going to harass myself. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm demeaning myself, right? It has to all start with me. How I'm going to show up in my relationships in a way that is respectful to myself and to others, right? And that's how we're going to make that change happen out in the world. We've got to start with our own self-care, our own forgiveness of the shitty shit we've all been through, right? And it's not because I'm at fault for all these things happening, but I want to take care of myself. I want to take care of myself and the ways that these things have happened for me in my life, and pretty much every woman on the planet, including men, right? This is not excluding men, but right now we're having a conversation about the oppressed, repressed, and abused feminine on the planet as a whole, right? Not just women, but the feminine. So speak out. That's important. Say it's not okay. That's part of us taking our power back. But let's not stay in the finger pointing and the anger, because that's not going to move us forward. What's going to move us forward is us taking ownership of healing and loving ourselves as women, beginning to really notice how we take care of ourselves and our own feminine. Because I don't know about you, but I was raised in the patriarchy. I learned how to be pretty damn hard on myself and pretty kind of abusive to myself, because I learned how to buy into that culture of you're not enough yet, you're not this, you're not that, right? We buy into that because we can't help it. We're raised in it. But once we get older, now we can change that. We can say, I am no longer going to abuse myself. I am no longer going to accept abuse in my relationships. I am no longer going to allow my inner critic beat me up, right? And that's where it starts. That's where the healing starts. We have to show up and be willing to pay attention to how we are abusing ourselves, how we are allowing abuse in our life in any way, and how we're going to resurrect this feminine, right? This power of the feminine, which is our creativity, our ability to birth change, our ability to be intuitive, our ability to be caring and in relationship. This is what is going to help heal the culture as a whole, okay? But we can't do that until we do the work here, okay? So we're really just wanting to say, this is really scary to see all of this abuse exposed, and on another point of view, it's a greatest gift, because we have to wake up. We have to wake up to how horribly out of alignment the way that we live is. The way our culture has taught us that it's all about money, and it's all about power, and it's all about working really hard and getting these things, right? Like, it's so out of whack. And we can make a difference when we start here, when we lovingly come to those places we've been wounded and abused, and we say, I'm so sorry this happened. I forgive myself for somehow allowing it, or that it happened. Not saying that we all like put ourselves in situations to be victimized, but having been an abused woman in my marriage, it was really hard for me to take ownership of the places that I actually was stuck thinking, let me just be more pleasing and it will stop. And it didn't stop. And I had to take ownership of, where am I showing up for me? I keep trying to make it okay by pleasing this person who's really unhealthy and out of control. And the only way that I could start to make a difference was finally feeling this small, this smushed against the corner, and saying, oh, hell no, no more. This is not okay. But like, I couldn't find that part of me for so long because I was such a people pleaser, and I was such an insecure woman, feeling like it was my job to please men, and it was my job to like make sure they liked me. And you know, like that was my sense of value, right? But as women, we get to change that story. We get to show up and really start loving ourselves so that we know we're valuable and our worth never changes. But then we get to behave different in our relationships, right? And that's what we're talking about. How to show up in the world, in our relationships differently, with consciousness of like, how am I taking care of myself? Am I being self-abusive in some way because I'm not seeing how this person's behaving? Okay? So this work might seem like difficult and scary, but it's part of the work that's happening, whether we think we're ready or not. The world is expressing that the abuse has to end, and we have to step up and find our voice to say, yes, it's time. It's time to find our voice, and it's time to tell the truth, and then it's time to look at how I'm going to show up for myself so that I can make a difference. So I want to hear if anybody has any commentary or personal, share about the news media and all that's happening with the exposure of sexual harassment. If you have something you want to share about that, please feel free. And I'm so glad you all showed up. This is a difficult conversation because there's so many different ways we can be fearful of hearing about abuse and sexual harassment, and yet it's such a present reality for all of us in every day. And I think at this point, it's so unconscious, we have to do the work to make it conscious. And that's what's happening. Women are saying, this happened to me. It is not okay. It was not okay. And I'm saying that now. I'm taking ownership of my voice. And then we go to the next step and we do the healing work for ourselves so that we get to move forward to be that positive feminine voice about how women are going to treat ourselves and how women are going to treat each other with kindness and respect, and how we're going to help men know how to treat us differently. We have to teach them because it's our work to step into our power, into our consciousness of what does living with self-respect and self-care look like for each of us, and how are we going to show up different so that we're not just in denial, and then we're not just letting anxiety like make us fearful, small, and stuck, because that's what anxiety does, right? It just makes us fearful, small, and stuck. And so this is the permission. This happening is this permission to say, this happened to me. It's not okay that this happened to me. And that's fabulous. It's awesome. But we got to take it to the next step, ladies. We got to take it to the next step. We going to say, this happened to me. It's not okay. And I'm doing my healing work so I can step into my power and I can find my voice and I can start making a difference in how I show up in my life and teach people how the feminine needs to be treated, right? But we have to be willing to see where we might be mistreating the feminine for ourselves, right? We might be really harsh on ourselves. We might be really negating of our feminine, and we look to the masculine for that. Am I okay? Am I good enough? Because that's what we know, right? That's what we've been taught. That's the patriarchy in a nutshell. But we got to be willing to do it different now. I got to be willing to look in the mirror and say, Kate, you are doing the best you can, and it's good enough, and I love you, and I respect you, right? Each of us get to do that. We get to start showing up for ourselves from that place, and that's what's going to start the change. And it's time, ladies. This is the time. We have this opening in the consciousness of the planet to start to really affect change. But we can't do it if we're stuck in our anxiety and our fear. We cannot do it from that place, okay? And I know it's hard. I know it can be really scary. but I want you to know it's possible. And it's so important, not only for our own personal well-being, right? Living in fear sucks really bad. We don't want to live in fear. We want to live in stuff's happening. I'm aware. I know what I need to do to take care of myself, and I'm going to keep showing up and being as loving, as kind as I can with myself. That's what we want to do, okay? And then from there, we can make a difference in our communities. So I actually wanted to read this to you. I do this Kuan Yin Oracle readings often, and I chose a card for today about how to support women in the face of all this abuse. And I just wanted to share with you this little part of it, the reading, okay? So this deck is called Kuan Yin Oracle. And I pulled Turquoise Lotus Mother. And I'm going to read it. Turquoise Lotus Mother brings precious healing to you now. Allow yourself to be lifted out of your struggle, beloved one. An old pattern is finally in its death throes, something that weighed heavily on you from the past. This can be one of the most testing times to allow something to go, just when it seems so demanding of your time, focus, and attention. Yet no doubt, do not doubt, you have actually learned the lessons it required of you, and now you are being blessed with an opportunity to receive karmic healing. So basically, she's talking about we've had possibly these experiences of pain and abuse and sexual harassment. We need to learn, we need to own the lessons and move forward, okay? We need to move forward now and let it go so that we can continue to evolve, okay? So that's my share today on anxiety and the sexual abuse stuff in the news. Keep looking at how you can have enough support for yourself. Be willing to reach out. I'm available if you would like support. I have actually a Black Friday deal on my online program right now that is an anxiety coaching program, and I have a Black Friday deal for 60% off that program right now. If you go to my website, katedow.com, pretty straightforward, and go ahead and take the survey for fun, and then sign up and apply. And we can get on a call and we can talk about what's going on for you and if my program might be helpful or not, because I don't recommend people to my program if it's not a fit, okay? I'm not interested in people coming if I don't think they're gonna really benefit, and if they're not gonna really be able to take away all the results I want them to have. So www.katedow.com. I'll be putting some more information about that. Please feel free, if you didn't catch all this video, to come back and watch it. It'll be posted shortly. And I just want to send my blessings and prayers to all of you. This is an intense time, so please keep showing up, learning how to love and care for yourself so that we can help get out there and do the work we got to do to help heal this planet and turn things around. Okay, take care.